Hi, all. I'm Lee Blickley here at the crowded, jam-packed Build studio in New York City, getting ready to talk things You Season 2. And yes, spoilers are coming, so continue watching at your own risk. But hey, I'm sitting next to Joe Goldberg at my own risk, so let's be fearless together.
My name's Penn. I'm kidding. You can call me Joe. It's fine.
The second season of You hit Netflix last month and shocked viewers with a twist no one saw coming, involving the somehow likable stalker killer Joe and his new obsession, love. Here to talk us through everything is Joe himself. Actually, his name is Penn Badgley, and writer-producer Sarah Gamble. Hello, you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for being here, and we have a lot of fans. Did everyone watch season 2 already? I'm assuming over the holiday break. Have you guys watched the full thing?
Yeah, of course. Well, she's probably had to see it.
I'm catching up now. Don't spoil me.
You're like, I have no idea what happened. But congrats, too, on season 2. I know you guys knew you were getting a season 2, but the show moved over to Netflix. So before we get into all, the plot and all of that of season 2, I want to know how you felt when the show went to Netflix and how it's kind of changed the dynamic of making it that bingeable program, which I think it caters to the story very well.
Well, nowadays, most shows eventually go to a streaming service like Netflix, so we kind of had that in mind while we were making it for commercial television. And Netflix were our partners in season 1 on Lifetime, but a little more in the background. And so there was that sad moment when the show was canceled, because that happened. And then there was a happy moment when Netflix stepped up and took the show over as a Netflix original. Then there was the very happy moment when we realized a lot of people were watching it.
Yeah. Did that surprise you? Because Lifetime, they said, the ratings were lower, and then it hit Netflix, and it exploded, and so many more people watched it. Was that surprising to you? Were you happy about that? I'm sure you were, because you got a season 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious how much viewing patterns have just so wildly shifted. Like, I was trying to explain cable to my 10-year-old stepson, and at some point I realized, like, this is just pointless. I'm not So it wasn't such a surprise that it would do better, that it would be more accessible, that more young people would be watching it that way. I think what was probably the surprise was that it was, with the numbers that it came in with, that they then later revealed, which, Netflix doesn't often do. No, they don't need to. They can do what they want.
But when they can,
they're like 43 million.
They're taking over the world. Yeah.
43 million. Just so you know, entire season. That was the number.
High completion rate.
Yes.
Yeah, which I think it's like back up there already, because it's, I hear, very top on the streamable list right now. Season 2.
Does seem, yeah.
So coming back and playing Joe again, how do you get back into the mindset of this sociopathic, psycho killer that we all love?
Yeah, that we all love. Being American helps, I guess. No.
True, that was sad.
The last thing I'll say about that today during the 2 o'clock hour. Let's see. I did, to be honest, just to clarify, I never did a lot of clinical research about what it really takes to put a person here, because I felt like, while it's really helpful for those who want to predict the behavior of those and bring them to justice, those people are actually painfully unaware of what has led them to that place. It's the pain, of trauma continuing its cycles through generations. This doesn't just happen arbitrarily to people. It's like it comes from something that happens to them too, and then miseducation they receive. So I think for me it was just always very intuitive. It was just really like understanding that, like that to him there's some purpose, and to him he believes in what he's doing somehow because he's doing it, and that actually, I mean, because what they're doing, what the creators are doing, what the writers are doing, what the directors do, what everybody other than the actor does is actually
everything.
Creating it, and then all I do is just do it, and then when I do it and believe it, you're like, well, that's really crazy, man. But all I'm doing is just believing it, I think. So in a way, the job is simple, not necessarily easy, but it's simple.
Yeah, and it's a cool role to play. I mean, it gives you so much to work with, and you get to have fun, I'm sure, on set.
It is actually strangely very fun sometimes. Yeah.
Just some of your facial expressions, I'm like, he must have loved doing this.
You know what's weird? So many people talk about my facial expressions as though I'm not an actor. Like, It's like, every actor does this.
Okay, but in their defense.
They're like, you've never been perceived as an actor before.
No, not that. Just the opposite. Usually actors have lines.
Right, and I don't,
frequently
yeah.
you just have to register a long series of thoughts with no lines to speak in a scene, and then you do voiceover later.
That's true.
So I feel like it's worth complimenting. Don't you guys think it's worth
Thank you.
complimenting?
Oh,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
And the voiceover work is
yeah, which is this whole other thing, which is actually very fun and very extremely performative. Like this, I'm really in my body in a different way. But when I'm Joe, often I just kind of like stand, you know, and just look
That
at
just
things.
creeped me out a tiny bit.
he is Joe. Do you do the voiceover? Do you get to watch snippets of the scenes that you shot?
You know,
You do the voiceover?
when I'm punching in, like when Sarah has edited together the first, I don't know exactly how it happens. So you can punch in with me here if I get something wrong. But I think the way that it happens is that like after the first cut, and she's getting her fingers into the cut and doing all that stuff. That sounded a little.
Sounded correct.
Yeah, I mean,
Very Joe.
It's on brand. Then I'll get notes, which then I can also match to what has been shot, so that I'm seeing, and I really do see what's like. It's like, oh, we need the, you know, we kind of need the inflection on this moment because this is how it's being cut. But the first time, I do it before having shot it. So and from what I gather, what you guys have appreciated so much is that like somehow that really works. Somehow.
Well, we need you so we can cut to your voice.
Right.
But it's this weird catch-22 where that means that you're recording it before you see it.
do it.
But we tried the thing where just an editor did temp Joe Goldberg, and it's really not the same. It's pretty incredible how when somebody who's not an actor are reading the lines, I'm like, I'm a terrible writer. And then he'll do it, and I'll be like, I'm a genius.
And it's funny because it has like a Dexter vibe, and you guys actually in season 2 throw out Dexter.
Reference,
so I'm like,
yeah.
he does exist in this world.
Yeah, I've actually wondered about that. How you guys ever draw the line where with cultural references? Because it's so self-referential. I feel like season 3 you're going to drop a Gossip Girl reference. I mean, like,
That's the one reference where
That
I
you
would
won't
text you
yeah,
first, like,
yeah,
are you
right.
okay with this?
But I love that. Was that clearly it was a choice of yours? But how do you decide? Yeah, what references to put in, where you want to place them? Because that was exciting. This season was really fun with the little hints and jokes and.
I like watching shows that give me very specific pop culture references so I can feel kind of inside the same world as the show. And really the deciding factor was just what would these people be watching? And I think it's a line that 40 says about Dexter. And 40 probably binged that show. High on crack. He probably watched the whole series. And so we just try to be true to the characters. And in LA, everyone has seen everything. They watch TV all day long.
Yeah. I love that's a great transition for us too, is going into LA, which was a new set piece this season. How is that for you guys to take the show from New York to? I'm assuming you guys filmed it in LA too.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Sarah lives there. I live here in New York, but working there, I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed visiting. I lived there as a teenager and really didn't enjoy it. In that unique way, a teenager can really not enjoy something. But I did love it this time around.
It's just fun to go from place to place and be very specific about it.
Yeah.
And there's a very specific subculture of New York that the book sends up that then we were sending up. But LA is just so ripe for jokes. We actually had to draw the line sometimes because reality is too broad for the show. It would feel like we were exaggerating if we actually portrayed people the way they are in those grocery stores. So that was what you saw was the toned down version of how we feel living in LA.
Oh my God, that's toned down.
Reality
I'm a
is
New
always,
Yorker, so like that just was a whole new world for me. I was like, Anarvin, what the
Oh, it's
heck is
coming
this
here.
store?
Don't act like it's not coming here. You think there isn't
You drink green
matcha
juice.
in Soho? Where are we right now? No, there's. Yeah.
But that, but it was a cool change, and the whole change of the season was we kind of are rooting for Joe to figure shit out and be that person that we hope he can be, and he's trying to do that as well. Was that fun to play, like Joe trying to not be the psychopath that he is?
Yeah, it was. I mean, even in the first episode where he, the voiceover does this special thing where every now and then it like will really match the moment of reaction where he's like he's being drawn into his pattern of saying hello you, and then he stops himself and he's like no I can't do this, and it you know there are always episodes where I get to be. It first started in the 6th episode of season 1, where I had fewer lines than ever, and the bloody, like, swollen face, which was like a mask, basically. And I was like Jim Carrey, like sneaking around the house, with, you know, like right in
Peach
front.
episode.
Yeah, the Peach episode,
Yeah.
where all 2 of us are spying on Beck at the same time, and it's just so crazy. That was the first time that in the voiceover I then started to really experiment with how, you know, almost like comical it can get, for the sake of just, I don't know, just a broader spectrum of the way we're playing with all of this. And so in this season, I think, I mean, aren't there a lot of takes that end up not being used of the voiceover? Where I feel like sometimes I go quite big, right? Like sometimes I do things that I know are, if they don't.
You go batshit crazy.
Yeah. Like, I mean, there are things that I do where I'm like, I know this almost will not work, but if it does, it would
Should
be
do like an
amazing.
alternate cut.
Yeah.
With all the non-use. No, we wouldn't do that.
The blooper reel of the voiceovers. I'd love it.
It actually would probably be good if somebody would take the time. I mean, that would be like, it would, that's,
Like, I don't
Have you been on TikTok? Apparently people are doing that.
Are you on TikTok?
no.
I was like, I wouldn't.
But I have learned the renegade dance.
Oh, wow. They're like, can you do it for us?
No, that would be, no, because if I didn't do it right, no.
Oh, you
Not
know
giving
now.
you guys
Sarah's
that-
just
that
like,
meme.
I'm putting TikTok in season 3. Joe's on TikTok, stalking on the neighbor, which we'll get to. But first, I want to talk about Love Quinn, who is such an incredible character in this. Sarah, tell me, I know it's based on the book, but how did you come to cast Victoria, and what did she kind of bring to the role that was exciting? Because
That was-
it's a great part.
Thank you. That was definitely the highest pressure piece of casting for season 2. Not least because, if we're going to be a little reductive about it, she's following in the footsteps of Elizabeth Lale, who's such a tremendous actress. And we're saying, you know, just be totally different,
Yeah.
but in the same kind of role. I just have to give it entirely to Greg Berlanti, my writing partner on the show and also the sort of super producer of 25 of your favorite shows, who was watching Hill House one night and texted and said, have you seen this yet? I'm binging it. I really feel like the youngest sister could be her. And then we, of course, saw 500 people for this role, and it was her. I mean, there's a reason Greg Berlanti is Greg Berlanti.
Oh, I love Nell Crane. Did you guys watch Hill House too? Oh, you got to do it if you didn't.
I didn't. She, you know,
You didn't watch it, so you didn't know her.
No,
Good.
That was like her first thing.
No, I know. I wanted to, and she's very talented. And I, to support Victoria, we would talk about it, and I really did want to watch it. But while portraying Joe, the last thing I wanted to do was go home and watch that.
Yeah.
So I still have not gotten around to it, but I will.
Well, now the way Love's character pans out, I'm like, poor Victoria's just playing these like crazy roles. But did you guys all watch it? I'm gonna spoil it, but Love ends up being like almost worse than you, or at your level. It's like the two of you are both psycho killers. I'll say it again. Were you excited by that ending? Was it surprising? Did you know it was coming? When did you find out that?
They told me in the beginning. I mean, it was in a room with Greg and Sarah, and Greg and his typical like, he's extremely like nonchalant about because he's such a super producer at this stage, and he's extremely nonchalant. And you know what? He always wears a hat. I just realized too. He often he has that, but he
He's
doesn't.
here
at
right
all
now,
look-
you guys.
He's
No, I'm
not
kidding.
not remotely creepy. He's like the most wholesome guy. And he was just like, "Do you want to know?" And I was like, "Yeah, you mean like the end of the?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was just like, "Yeah, it would actually really help." And he's like, "All right, well, so you know, she's a killer," and and the way that they explained it to me, it's what helped get me through season 2 shooting, because I know, for instance, season 1, it was just very hard to put so much into that relationship, these two characters falling in love and trying to make it work, even though it's like so toxic and strange and manipulative and abusive and all these things. You're still in this world where you're trying to understand it as the character does, which is something that the character wants. So then you're kind of in that headspace, and then knowing that she was going to die the whole time was actually very hard. Yeah. It was not. That was a new experience for me, and so knowing that this time it was going to work out differently was enormously helpful.
But does it change your performance at all, knowing that, you know, when you're in scenes with her,
Knowing
you're
at
like,
the
I
end
know where your character's heading, before she probably even knew? I think she said episode 5 is when she found out. where Love's character was going. So you knew before
I
her.
thought she knew the whole time.
I thought she did, but I believe her.
She's such a good actress. I think I believe her. No. No, because also as an actor, like, I don't know, knowing that it's not real is... I mean, if knowing the end would ruin a performance, that would mean you could never read a script,
That's
technically, you know? You'd have to somehow convince yourself that everything is real, and then you're a maniac.
Or everything's fake.
Yeah, right, sure.
But was it cool for you to feel like Joe wasn't alone, though, in this?
Yeah, no,
novel?
that's what I mean. It's
Yeah,
like
to have
that
somebody.
was solace. That was definitely a huge part of being able to enjoy the journey along the way.
Yeah. And did you guys talk about what these characters kind of mean? Having them on
not at all,
screen,
no.
like in this landscape, how it like, what you're representing on screen and what you're showing in a story like this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think about these. I mean, I've in press and stuff, I've been vocal about the way that I've thought about it. I think mostly to positive reception and effect for the show. But I'm a thinker, and I think about these things a lot. And we did naturally talk about them. I can't remember. I mean, God knows what we were thinking about and working through as we were doing it. But she's another thinker, and she was thinking about this stuff a lot.
And how did you kind of approach season 2 and the character of Love and making sure, on top of all these supporting characters that have such great, rich storylines in this too, how do you go about balancing everybody's story to make sure it all fits together, everybody gets their moment? Because there's 40 and Ellie and Delilah, and there's so many great characters this season.
Well, there's a whole team of writers in a room, and that's all we do all day is sketch out first what happens in the big arc of the season, and then we go smaller and smaller and smaller till we're working on one act of one episode. So there's a lot of eyes on every single scene. But it was exciting to write Love knowing where we were going to be taking her. And Victoria had to really place her trust because we didn't have a script for her to read that would justify how a character who seems so loving and so sunshiny and so caring could have done the things that she did. So the earlier conversations were just, we promise that the things you're doing right now will continue to make sense, that you won't just seem like you were a complete crazy person. And so in that, because we just didn't have time to write all the scripts before we started shooting. So it is kind of a thing where we all hold hands and trust each other, I think, while we're making the season. And I think that was true of James also playing 40, because yeah, I think he is one of my favorite arcs of season 2 because he's just the biggest douchebag when you meet him. But people by the end were texting me very sad that he met the fate he did, and that made me feel like he did his job really well and we did our job well.
Yeah, because he had a great arc this whole entire season where you're always rooting for Love and you're kind of like 40's ruining her life. He's taking control, and then at the end, it's Love who was like, well, I was like, what the happened? She shocked me. But then, of course, you also have the characters of Delilah and Ellie, like I mentioned, who kind of reminded me of the first season with you and Paco, and how Ellie's kind of like the new Paco. Do you think Joe needs that character to kind of? He seems to always want to protect someone who's at that younger stage in their life, where he first experienced his own trauma.
I mean, as far as I understand it, it's the audience that really need. I mean, to like really practically answer it, it's the audience that needs that character to see that part of Joe. It's the clearest way, short of flashbacks, which we also have more of this season. But I can imagine that's also a tool that you want to be careful about using too much. So it's a way to, in the present, see how it is that he interacts with like that part. Like there are somehow these moral lines that he won't cross, that make him a tenable character. Like if he was, it might be true. It really might be true that like a true serial killer capable of like this level of manipulation and abuse and lethality would be like we can't watch that, because I mean the documentaries we do have of that, we're not seeing, like the kind of stuff we're seeing in this shit. We're only seeing, court appearances and this kind of thing. So in order to make this an enjoyable process and a worthwhile thing, we have to just see how it is that Joe kind of got to be the way that he is. And so I think those younger characters are that, right? They're a portal into that. Yeah. They also are their own people and characters. And so the way they're brought to life is really interesting and adds a lot of depth too. But as far as Joe is concerned, that's the way I think about it.
I like that it makes him more complicated too. Because like you were talking about sociopaths, and I love reading all of those books, and I have a lot of psychiatrists in my family who tell me I'm wrong when I defend Joe's mental status.
Call them up like, does this make
No,
sense? Yeah.
but it adds a little loop in his character description that defies the DSM, which is the book that psychiatrists use to diagnose you. Because we're not a documentary, and we're not making this for doctors to help them do their jobs. We're telling a story of one character. And so I like that it makes him a little bit harder to quantify by those very specific standards we like to use.
It does. Well, anytime he was in a scene with Ellie, I just saw the goodness in him, and I was rooting for him. Even in the end, I'm still rooting for him, and I don't know why. Like, can you guys explain though why we are all rooting for Joe? Is this the life we live in? Is this our culture? It's kind of
programmed.
Yeah,
We have been programmed from very young age by almost every film and television show we've ever seen. Usually, they star someone who looks a lot like Penn. And
Sometimes it does star Penn.
sometimes it stars Penn.
a little easy, eh?
Yeah, where they cross lines, they chase you through airports, they stand outside your window holding a boombox after you've said no repeatedly.
But you don't mean it.
Right. I mean, she means yes, she's just being coy, right? So we forgive men easily, especially ones that are acting from a place of emotion and romance and trying to be a good guy. And we look for reasons to punish women really
Judge
quickly.
women. We
judge, yeah, exactly.
Forgive men and we judge women. Before I go to the audience Q&A, I have to talk about the food aspect of the season because you guys really hit. You made me hungry the entire, every single episode.
I ate so much.
Did you eat those
on
muffins for
camera.
real?
Yeah, no. I mean, really, like, it got to the point where I had to know when we were shooting which scene on any given day, so that because you end up eating like a lot of food if you're eating it in the actual scene. I mean, it's legit. It's like you wouldn't think that it's that big of a deal, but like we're talking like 16 donuts. You know what I mean? So if you've eaten lunch, you need to think of, and then by the way, and then if you need to run in a scene later, you just need to think, or before. You know what I mean? It's like you need to think about these things. You actually have to kind of schedule. So I was very frequently scheduling my real life eating around the fact that I had to eat so much on camera, whether it was chicken or pastry or donut or celery juice was one of them. Yeah, but it wasn't. You know, it was celery mixed with something else that was green. It was pretty good. It was melon.
It definitely wasn't just celery
No,
juice.
no, it was not. It was not.
There was a lot of puking this season.
There was.
Yeah. How is
Every
that?
season,
How
every
is that
season,
to
I feel like
pretend
we-
puke though? You just got
I
something.
gotta say, it's like people sometimes when they ask writers questions, they say, "Why do you love torturing your character?" And I usually don't, but Joe is kind of an exception.
Yeah, well, yeah, we got to torture the guy.
Yeah,
Finger, like,
I
that
wouldn't
was
ever want anything bad to happen to Penn on any level. But Joe, it's really fun
No.
to chop off his finger in an episode or make
Totally.
him puke and faint. He deserves everything bad that happens to him. So it is this strange catharsis, I feel like.
It is fun actually to
Yeah.
go like the whole pinky thing, the like getting tied up was really interesting because it was
that was painful.
it was.
Do you do yoga? Like I
No.
hope so.
No, I mean there were points where like my arms were yeah, I mean I had like bruises and scrapes. You know, you can't avoid it when you're gelling.
You're Joey. And Joe's going to be a father, which
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good or real
bad.
bad. Yeah, it's real bad.
It's bad.
But you have been, like I mentioned, you've been good to Ellie and Paco. So
Yeah.
do you think this
And
will
you
help
ruin their
him?
lives, both of them.
That's true. Yeah.
We're going to get a season 3, right?
We're hoping.
Yeah.
We haven't
We need
yet.
to know what happens with that baby
Well,
and that neighbor who some people are theorizing could be your mom. Did you read that
No,
theory?
I mean, look at her arm. She's not, and she's a brunette. Oh, what am I saying? She could dye her hair. That was stupid.
Chemical.
Nothing bad's gonna happen with the baby. Everyone's gonna live happily ever after. Joe is gonna open up a dog rescue next season.
Oh, that's so sweet.
He'll know people.
Yeah, he's got to get away from those books.
And then the voiceovers will be of dogs.
Dog's Purpose, Part 3. We have a Twitter question for Penn. Do you have any similar characteristics to Joe Goldberg? That's fun. His eyes, his hair.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I try to just mean it when I'm Joe, as much as I can. So when there are so many scenes where he's being a good, really considerate person if you were to take away his voiceover. And here's the thing, I don't do the voiceover when I'm in the scene. I do it either before or after. So in the scene, I mean, most of the time I'm just actually meaning it. So those characteristics, it's like, he is trying to evolve and change and be better, and he's very investigative. I think I share that with him. I do love to read nonfiction, historical nonfiction. I love to learn, and I think that is a fundamental characteristic of Joe's that makes it, I think, easy for me to play him.
Yeah. Are you savvy with social media? Because Joe's very savvy.
I think I've demonstrated some kind of relationship with social media. I don't feel savvy on it though at all.
Yeah. That's good.
It stresses me out. Actually, it takes me way too long to make a post most of the time. Like on Instagram, I just don't get it. It's like images. Twitter makes way more sense to me. Instagram, I'm like, I don't know how to say this because who wants to read a caption? I mean, really, who wants to read a caption? Can we be real? Like, you see you do? Okay, that's actually really good to know. That's good to know.
Like we do.
And when you speak, then it's true.
The truth. We have some audience questions. Who's first?
Hi. So season 2 was amazing, and it was a lot of fun to watch. So I'm wondering, Penn, was there any episodes or scenes in particular that you had more fun filming and post to others?
Episode 8. It was really fun. Like it was just like this operatic. It's the acid trip episode where his level of mania is so high the entire time, which was just fun and weird. It was exhausting. I had a rare 2 days off after that episode where I needed it more than ever. I was sore and I was tired because it just the entire time, like it was
so much acid.
Trip. You took so much acid, didn't you, Penn?
Apparently.
What was your favorite to watch or to see come to fruition?
It's kind of an embarrassment. It's really fun to be in post because I get to see every take that they do and pick from all the great stuff they're doing. But cutting the montage, cutting the intercut between Love cooking and Joe dismembering.
Yeah.
In particular, the shot where it starts with him holding the hand and it ends with the meat coming out of the meat grinder. Yeah. I just love it. Yeah. I watched it so many times
chops
for fun.
Or ribs or whatever that
yeah.
was.
Yeah, I was really proud of it.
It is good.
So I'm fascinated by the reaction to Joe from everyone on Twitter.
Me too.
Especially because the end of this season is him equating fatherhood in the suburbs to like a universal punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to know, from Lifetime season to it being streamed on Netflix and now this season, what was the most fascinating aspect of fan reactions to Joe?
It's a great question. We don't have the time on television to really think about it as deeply as your question warrants. It's hard. I don't know, but it's a great question, and I like what you just said about. It's like, come on, guys. Joe is terrible. He is equating fatherhood in the suburbs. Of course, we also know that surely plenty of fathers do the same thing because fathers historically have not been showing up as well as they could, right? We all know that. I'm not speaking personally. It's like look at systemically what we're looking at across the world, across time is the inability of men to show up. Isn't that right? Which of course we're hoping is changing slowly but surely. So I take it very seriously. I think the reactions are clearly a lot of people feel the same way. But the most interesting. I don't want to sound too irreverent, but probably the memes.
The memes are crazy.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying
Favorite
them.
meme? You have a favorite one that you saw?
I like the ones where I have hoops and nails. Those are fun. That's just.
I'm not
that's
gonna
fun.
lie. I texted one of those to Greg. I like the ones where people are like, I'm wearing a hat, I'm invisible.
Yeah. I like the hat ones too. I like that somebody tweeted just a hat. I think you know what, the Netflix account, social account, they are so on brand.
We're
and on
sending them
point.
a fruit basket. We love them.
They're doing really well. I think at one point they sent a tweet that was just a hat, and then somebody responded like, "I didn't know you could tweet a blank tweet," which is just this interplay that is brilliant.
You gotta love the internet, right?
Yeah. Who invented that thing? Al
I have
Gore?
no clue. Here we go.
So if Joe was killed off, how would you guys feel, and would it carry on with the show? And it's just like Love's now the main protagonist.
Well, you'd be out of a job, so I'm sorry.
Just narrating love from heaven.
Yeah. I think Joe. It would be great if Joe was brought to justice. Does it mean death, though? I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I think death is too easy.
In a
for
way,
him.
yeah.
I
Candace
wouldn't
thinks
consider
that
that yeah. I mean, we wouldn't want to rob the world of Joe doing such a terrible job in so many ways every season. But, you know, the show itself is about how frequently we, among other things, it's about how we call it love, but sometimes it's obsession. We call it love, but sometimes it's the opposite. It's actually hate, but just very passionate. And that is such a huge topic. And it's so visceral, and there are so many things to talk about. That's why it's exciting to bring in new characters and to tell a story like Love's story, because there is more to get at than just with Joe. But he is really the perfect way in, and he's the perfect person to be commenting on it, I think.
Yeah. What would we do without Joe?
Don't ask me.
All right, last question. Here we go.
Hi. My question is, season one of my favorite themes was how easy it is, I think, to forgive men, like you were just talking about. And now season 2, I love Love, and the fan reaction has been really similar in that we've all forgiven her really easily too. So I was wondering, do you think the show ever could have worked with a female protagonist, or do we need Joe to get there first?
Let me just say, these young girls over here.
Yeah,
great
that's what I'm talking about. It's the youth.
questions. Yeah, and I love your shirts.
I kind of feel like telling you just go write one, because I would like to read it. But I think both, so Joe is kind of at the pinnacle of privilege, I think, in America. He is a straight, cisgendered white man of a certain amount of means. And so essentially he can clock people on the head with a brick and no one suspects him, like in broad daylight at a taco stand. And then
Like stand in front of somebody's window and stare at her for hours on end.
we give all the plausible deniability to men like Joe in this culture, just to be serious about it for a second. But he's not the only person in the universe of America with privilege, and Love is maybe just one tick down. So as we've been able to expand the world, and now that we're all kind of on the same page about the language of the show and the metaphor of the show and what we're like really talking about underneath the entertainment of it, Love is intensely privileged in so many ways. And I think that there's a lot to say about that with a woman like her as well. So, you know, why not both? Why not all of it, right?
That's why we need a season 3, and hopefully we'll get one. I'm assuming we'll get one. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you both for answering all our questions.
Thank you for having us.
You season 2 is now streaming on Netflix, so check it out.
Thank you.